Okay, so we're back. You guys, I'm literally wearing my AirPods. I'm not prepared for this video at all. You guys are also getting like a slightly different angle just because I have like a lot of things on my couch. I did my wash today, so it's all there. I still have to like fold it and sort it out. But yeah, like I don't know why I'm here, to be honest, and maybe we're gonna figure this out today, right now. But yeah, how are you? How are you guys doing? I feel like it's been a second, but at the same time, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Except for right now where I'm already doubting myself. That I can actually say something without being prepared or feeling like I need to like have some big idea to tell you guys. I guess I wanted to talk about confidence, and I think this is something I'm going to talk about, something that's always going to be part of who I am and how I move through this world, because I believe now that self-confidence has been something that I learned to do, that I learned to kind of get into, and it wasn't always that way. And yeah, and I think I mentioned it like in the first video very quickly, how I went from having that fixed belief of there's people in this world who either have the confidence or they don't, and to even go a little bit deeper than that, I also had this fixed belief of, well, there's also introverts and extroverts. And then later I found out there's omniverts and there's a spectrum with that whole thing. But I also had a belief of, that I'm an introvert, and that was the truth, what I believed was kind of my reality, and I think for a while, and I don't know, as an introvert, maybe you can relate with this, or if you think you are an introvert, you feel like you need a lot of recharge time, and this was my reality. My reality was I would go to work throughout the week, and the weekends, all I would crave would just be to be alone, to spend as much time as possible just kind of recharging, like not being around a lot of people. And I thought that this was my nature, that this was just who I am, who I was always gonna be. And I think maybe there is a sort of misconception about this idea, because and especially with these whole like personality tests, which, by the way, like I want to believe in them, and I know that there's of course some sort of like scientific, like some sort of data research, but at the same time, like human to human, I think we change all the time. Like I don't think it's that simple. I really don't think that putting people into little categories and little boxes is the best way to kind of understand humans. I think we are always evolving and changing. And so yeah, like I really held on to this identity of being an introvert for a long time, and it would impact how I made friends. It would impact kind of just how I navigated life, and I think also a lot of people who believe they're an introvert think that like going to social situations, out with people, like doing these things, they have to like mentally prepare themselves for. They have to present themselves in a certain way and a certain manner to kind of be there and not to be like completely drained. And I felt this as well. I felt like when I would show up to a social situation, I would have to kind of put on this act, and to be kind of specific about it, it would be kind of this, like very open, very just like, hi, oh my God, how are you? Just like kind of very positive, like no like negativity, this like, basically this like higher self version that I would kind of like force to be there, and, it's kind of like, the best way to describe this, right? And this just came into my mind, and this makes me so excited. Okay, so like, when you're like on your phone and you're maybe like taking like a video or a photo, and you like turn up your brightness all the way, and you're just recording at like 4K 120 FPS, like the highest settings possible. This is how I was showing up to social situations, at like full settings, full like everything. And I think this is relatable. I think this is relatable for people who have labeled themselves as an introvert, because you think and you have this held belief that for me to be accepted, for me to, feel comfortable around others, I have to be this specific version of myself, because this version has been accepted. They have been, labeled in our minds as someone that's like nice to be around, As well, I think something that kind of came to me on this path, on this journey, was the book Quiet by Susan Cain, I think. And this is a very popular book amongst like psychology nerds, yes, psychology nerds, people who are getting into like self-help, mental health. Like this is quite a popular one because it goes so deep into the kind of introvert personality type. But to be honest, and reflecting on reading that book, this is gonna be a hot take. But I feel like what it did for me is, yes, it made me like aware of like, okay, this is like why I formed this kind of personality. And it kind of went into like, some people are either this or that, and a lot of it was very much coded in a lot of like sympathy and in a lot of like, okay, this is this is fine, you can kind of just accept this about yourself and just kind of continue doing this. And and actually, thinking about it now, that is fine, and maybe because I had that desire to change, that's why I look at it differently, and I think that maybe if you don't have that desire, then this video is not for you. This video is not for you. But I think for me, and oh my gosh, like I have so many ideas now. See, now that I turned this camera on, the ideas have come in. Yes, they have. And I just forgot all of them. That's the interesting thing about the human brain. It's like it's everything and then it's nothing. And then it's like just popcorn brain. But yeah, so as I was saying, like I really felt like that book for me was, now reflecting on it, it was a lot of just like sympathy. It was a lot of just like, yeah, it's like you are this way and you can stay this way and it's okay, fuck what society says, and in a way I do agree with this. Like I said, if you're like, okay, this works for me, I don't want to change, I don't want anything more, I'm happy with being an introverted person and, I'm content, then yes, perfect, but for me, after reading that book, I was like, okay, this is where I'm at right now, but it's actually not what I want at all. Because for me, I was an introvert, maybe externally, and in social situations, but the person I was on the inside was very far from this. On the inside, I had such a rich inner world, and I would play characters, I would create different environments, and I'd have these strong ideas that would play out in my mind, and they were there for so long. I was also someone who, as a child, I had an imaginary friend, I had like a whole world I would create, because I was dealing with parents who were not giving me that emotional validation, and I think that is quite a common experience, where as a child, if you don't really feel like safe to express yourself and your ideas, your uniqueness, and your parents kind of don't give you that space, you find that space within yourself, you create these places, and that's exactly what I did. And this kind of like continued building and went into my adult life, and so I had these two opposing things. I had, on the one hand, me as the external introvert, someone who, often would show up around their friends and be like, okay, well, this is it. I have to pack my bags. I'm ready to go. But on the inside, I would have this just like rich inner world. I would see myself as like a musician, an artist, someone who was doing just all these amazing things, and I would believe them, in my mind, but there was such a disconnect between the two worlds. And yes, we lost the train of thought, and we're gonna come back to it. So do I just say kind of how it changed, or there was something else I wanted to say, but I forgot it. It's gonna come back to me though. I know it is. I know it is. One thing is right now is that I'm not doubting that. I'm not doubting ideas coming back to me, because a lot of this shit that I'm saying now is things that again, the inner world, things that I had thought of, that I've came up with, but I couldn't express. I felt like I couldn't express this, you know? So yeah, like if you are watching this and if you are someone who feels the same, you know, that they have this like expansive, rich inner world, but then they feel like they can't express it, you know, we're going to get into this. We're going to get into what I did, how I kind of changed it, how I've been able to kind of let that side of myself be expressed, you know, and the kind of journey that I've been on, you know, and that I'm on right now. So yeah, like I believed that these feelings, these ideas that I had on the inside, I would never be able to express, you know, because they were so not who I was expressing externally, you know. But the version that I was showing up as, the person I was showing up as externally, it was a shield, it was a protection, you know, it was something that came from my childhood. And I think that what it took was learning that, you know, and realizing that that's what I was doing essentially, that I was just protecting myself, and that was okay. You know, that's how I got through this life experience, was putting up these walls. You know, I would meet new people and it would take me a long time to trust them. And I think so many of these like held beliefs we have, they develop in the childhood, you know, so that is somewhere that it's kind of good to look at, you know, where it started, get to the root of it and kind of sit with it a little bit, you know. And for me, a lot of these beliefs have these specific memories in the past. And I think it's fascinating how one like very sometimes quick situation in our childhood can have an impact in our lives for so long. You know, I think for me, it's these little moments. Like there was a situation with my parents in a car where one of my parents' friends, he would call me fat or something. And it's an interaction that like lasted maybe 30 seconds, but stayed with me for all of my teen years, all of my like young adult years. And it made me believe that I wasn't desirable, that I wasn't allowed to be like desired. You know, it was such a small, simple situation. And yet I had really emotionally resonated with it and gave it so much power, you know. And I just think that's so fascinating, you know, that it's these small situations, and yet they have so much power and energy. And it's like, what if we do go back to those places and sit with them as that person who is working on themselves now, who is working on them confidence, working on the self-belief, the self-trust. You know, when you sit with that child version of yourself as the adult self, and you kind of give them that new perspective on those situations, that's kind of when you heal, I think, you know. And I think that is essentially what I started doing through therapy, through kind of getting curious about what's going on with my mental health. I think like my desire to express my inner world started a while ago. It started probably at the start of last year when I first wanted to make videos and record myself. There was this like clear vision I had of myself being able to talk to a camera without any limitation, without any fear, without, you know, giving myself limits, you know. And I think that is a vision that I have held on to until now. And I don't know, I just had this like strong desire to find a way to get myself from the kind of mental space I was in, you know, where I felt so much fear, to express it, to get to a point where I'm at kind of right now, which is crazy, you know. Yeah, I'd love to like insert some of my like older videos for you guys here, just so you can kind of see the change. And like, I think it's so amazing what you can do when you start going down this path. Yeah, so let's go back to the topic of why I don't think you're stuck with being an introvert or an extrovert, because I think that's a really cool thing to talk about, because I haven't seen a video like this. You know, I haven't seen a video where someone just like sits down and like fully goes against what people believe. And I am an example of it. I'm an example of someone who went from being someone who believed they were an introvert to now I don't believe I'm either. And that's the crazy part. I think the crazy part of this is that now, going through these like last few months and these different experiences I've had, now I'm like, I don't think any of us are either this or that. I think we all exist on this ever changing spectrum, and I think we ultimately, all of us get to decide what we want, and if we have that desire to be someone who shows up as someone who is confident, someone who is able to be themselves easily around people, who makes friends easily, you can get to that, if that is something that you desire. And I think that's so important in this video that I want to say, because I'm never going to be the person. I'm never going to be the person to tell you how to live your life or like what you should do. This is for you to figure out, to think about. But I have some pretty cool ideas that I think maybe can inspire you. So I think that if you have these desires to be more confident, or to, be a kind of, I guess, more open version of yourself, someone who shares more of what's on the inside, I want to communicate to you and tell you that it is possible. It is actually possible. And fuck what we're told. I think it's such a norm to say like, oh, are you an extrovert or an introvert? Like, I'm neither. I don't think I'm this or that at all. I think that I shift states. Sometimes I am more on my inner world vibes, and then sometimes I'm just like, I love being around people and I need that. But going back to my story, so I think for me, what changed, and I kind of brought it up quickly in my first video, the concept of the shadow. And I love this topic, and I'm never going to shut up about it because it relates to all of you. Nobody's excluded with this one, because the shadow is the journey to accepting your full self, the full person, the tired version of you, the angry version of you, the version of you that procrastinates, the version of you that overthinks, and learning that all of those versions of you are okay and they're allowed to exist and they're accepted, And once you reach these points of acceptance within yourself, you can kind of show up without as much pressure, and I think that's what changed in my experience. It was that I went from being in a state where I believed I needed all this protection, because this was a belief I developed from childhood. I learned that actually I don't, and my vulnerability, my realness is my superpower. It's, the people that I've met, the experiences that I've had over the last few months, from going into this state, showing up just as my real true self, have just blown my mind that it's possible. It's possible to not feel like you need a filter, to not feel like you always need protection, and I think this video I want to focus on, and I want to say that yeah, if you have that desire, maybe the way that you go about it is getting interested in shadow work. And is there something that I would recommend related to it? Honestly, the first thing you find, honestly, no matter what it is that you find out there about shadow work, I think it will expand the way you think. And I've read maybe 1 or 2 books about it, and just understanding the basic concepts was good. But for me, living it and actually having those experiences where I proved to myself that actually that version that I am in this moment is worthy, is valuable, and should be expressed, that changed it. And I think, and I think as well, when it comes to like information and stuff, you already know it. You already know everything you need to know in this moment, And I think once you get to that point where you're able to link the two worlds, the external and internal, and allow all these ideas to kind of go through you and be expressed, you can use that to help somebody else too, whether that's people in your world or people online. Yeah, you guys, this video has went to so many different places, I feel, but I'm happy. I'm happy that I did this, because actually I was going to wait for a specific time, for a specific way that I was going to feel. But then I was like, nah, we're not doing that anymore. There's no such thing as I'll do it when I feel ready. Like, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll sit down, because like I said, like I already know I don't need to chase it. I don't need to like look for it. It already is. So yeah, and thank you guys again so much. And I look forward to adding more to this and building our relationship, because that's what I believe. I believe that these are, online relationships, and we can't see each other, but I think there's and okay, before I go, because I brought this up at the start of my last video, and I was so cash about it. I was so like subtle with this, but I think this is important to say. So I remember I said I've learned the most from the way of being of other people, other creators, than I have from actual like factual like information videos or whatever. And I think this is so true, because when I got into personal development and exploring all of that, I really thought I had to consume every self-help book. I had to, get all of the knowledge. And yes, knowledge is power, but I think experience and learning from people and the way that they are, their ways of being, it shouldn't be overlooked. So yeah, there's a few creators out there who I think just watching them, and their videos would be very simple. Like I know there's this one girl who would do a lot of like travel videos, but her way of being just really inspired me, and I think that should never be overlooked. Like if you have someone like that, online or even in person, that you're inspired by, take note of it, and kind of see how you behave, like it goes back to that whole thing of like, you are your surroundings, and if you want me to be part of your surroundings, that's kind of nice. That's kind of nice, and we can be friends online, and it feels nice that I'm able to do this, and to maybe have a space in your life, have some sort of presence, maybe a positive impact, some sort of motivation or something. But yeah, I also do want to say there's so many parts of me that I want to explore on this channel. Like I want to make videos like this, but I don't see a limit. All these like ideas that I had in my mind, these worlds that I created, I can create them externally, and I look forward to doing that. So with that being said, thank you guys again, and enjoy your week. If you got any comments, any questions, leave them down below. And yeah, thank you again.